Well, we invite you to catch the replay. That's our Substack. We have the Substack that will air on tomorrow, which you'll be able to catch a replay of our program on tonight, and that'll be on the Progressive Indiana Network on tomorrow. We're in election season. It is now it's time where you can even early vote here in Marion County. Yes, you can. You can early vote, and we think it's important that everyone exercises their right to vote, not just be registered, but in actuality, go out and exercise your right to vote. It's so important that your voice is heard. Too often I hear folks saying, well, it's not going to make a difference if I vote. Well, I'm here to tell you it will make a difference. And we're going to be talking about difference makers on tonight, as we're going to have a guest joining us who is a candidate for the 7th Congressional District here in Indiana. He's George Hornedo. He's going to join us here shortly, and we invite you to be part of the conversation. You can call into the radio station. That number is 317-480-1310. Once again, 317-480-1310. You can also comment on our Concerned Clergy Facebook page, and as well as my own page, Antonio Tony Alexander. We'll take those comments also. Let us pray. Father God, Lord, we thank you for this day. Lord, we pray in the name of Jesus, Lord, for our entire world. Lord, we know that there are wars, rumors of wars, but we still believe, oh Heavenly Father, Lord, that you are in control. Lead us, guide us, and direct us on tonight. Bless us. Bless our guests and our listening audience. In Jesus' name I pray. Amen. Well, once again, I'm Reverend Alexander. I'm glad to be with you on tonight. And as I shared earlier, we're looking forward to hearing from our candidate on tonight, George Hornedo, and he's going to share a little bit about what his platform is, what it is that he's going to do different. We know that we have an incumbent that is currently in that seat, Congressman Andre Carson. But during this primary season, there's definitely some competition there in the Democrat primary, and Mr. Hornedo is going to be one of those that's going to join us on tonight. He's going to share a little bit. So let us go ahead, and we'll bring in our president as well, as he's with us on this evening as well. So I want to say good evening, Mr. President and Mr. Hornedo. How are you?
Good evening. I'm glad to be with both of you gentlemen on tonight.
Mr. Hornedo, you must be on mute. Don't hear you. Still don't hear you.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you now.
Okay. Sorry about that. It was on my phone. But no, really appreciate the opportunity, Reverend Alexander and Reverend Greene, to be here and be able to connect with y'all and your audience. And, have really enjoyed being able to connect with Pastor Greene on the campaign trail over a variety of events, and really appreciate the moral framework that he talks about for his own campaign, and think that we need more of that in our politics.
All right. Once again, you can join us on tonight, 317-480-1310, and we'll go ahead and get started. Mr. Hornedo, as a congressional candidate, let's first of all just talk about just who George is, so the listening audience just gets a feel for who the man is.
Yeah, no, I mean, so George Hornedo, 35 years old. I joke that I'm a Hoosier by way of Texas. My parents were high school sweethearts. They married young. They had me young while in college. And in those early years, we struggled. I don't want to overstate it. I had a wonderful childhood, but, I was a WIC baby, for a period of time on government formula. And, as I got older, to me, that was an example of the positive impact that government can have on people's lives when government actually works for people. And so, I've always been into policy, but I've always been into politics because I am deeply competitive. And I see it as sport with consequence, and because I'm 5'7.5", and I give myself that half, I was never going to play college or professional sports. And so, my career has been dedicated to democratic politics and trying to better communities. So I've been fortunate enough to, work in the Obama administration as a presidential appointee at the Department of Justice, doing civil rights work under both Attorney General Holder and Attorney General Lynch. Been fortunate enough to work on a bunch of presidential campaign headquarters, from Obama to Clinton to senior staff for Pete Buttigieg to doing voter protection work for President Biden's 2020 campaign. Been fortunate enough to do a lot of policy work, both in education policy, in which I got my master's in that at Harvard, to running the policy shop at a national voting rights organization called Let America Vote. And I've also been fortunate enough in private practice to represent communities all over the country, like Birmingham, Jackson, Little Rock, Miami-Dade County, and the African American Mayors Association, helping secure federal funds on a range of different issues. And so, that's kind of been what's brought me to this point. And I know we'll talk more about it, but that's a little bit of the background on who I am and what I did before getting into this race.
Well, Pastor Greene, I know a couple things that George just mentioned, especially when it comes to federal funding. That's something that, one, we're hearing our current president saying that we don't need federal funding for such things such as Medicaid, Medicare, daycare, and things such as that. And then two, when we look at the state of what's going on in Indiana, it's really important that we have some funding dollars coming here. And I know that's something you've been trying to at least help folks understand, that we really need to watch or at least be in tune with those funding dollars that are flowing here to Indiana.
Oh, without a doubt, that's one of my big concerns. We've got to get more dollars to Indiana, get it in the right hands where it can meet the needs of Hoosiers. So that's, extremely important for really anybody that's occupying these political seats. I mean, the Congress, whoever the congressperson is, they have access to federal dollars. They need to get those dollars, not just to the state of Indiana and just kind of let it meander through some Republican hands, but how do you get it down to helping Hoosiers with, whether it's health care or child care? Those needs are critical. Our community is crying. When you're out on the political trail, one of the things you will consistently hear is people are complaining about affordability issues. They're complaining about life has gotten far too expensive. George is hearing it. I'm hearing it. And so people, if you're going to help people in this season, it's about getting dollars down to the average person, not, billionaires.
Yeah.
And George, how do you address those issues? I mean, the affordability piece.
I mean, this is one of the reasons that I'm running, right? I mean, I know Congressman Carson well. I like and respect him deeply. So it's not personal why I'm running. I'm doing it because it feels necessary. And this is a safe Democratic seat. So by and large, you're going to have a safe Democratic vote. So with the exception of a few things that have surfaced in this campaign, like, my opposition to data centers and his relative silence around it, or my, heavy advocacy in against ICE and kind of more of his reactive approach, by and large, you're going to have a safe Democratic vote in this seat. So it is less that I have qualms with his voting record than it is how we use the role of the platform. So I mean that in a few different ways. On this piece, unfortunately, we lag behind peer cities across the country in how much federal funds we bring home. So there's both the competitive grant process, of which I think we need to be more proactive in trying to find those opportunities, make sure that entities here in the city and in the district are aware, and help, not just on the application process, but on making sure that we advocate and bring that money home. The second piece that I think about is, Pastor Greene kind of referenced it, talking about some of this money coming through Republican hands. There is federal formula funding, which means that it is a set amount of money based off population, not based off need, that goes directly to states to administer. And so India is like a lot of those cities that I mentioned that I represented, Democratic cities and Republican states, where the dynamic is similar, of the Republican state kind of withholding its fair share of funds from that city, then blaming the city for its challenges, and then using that as rationale and justification to continue doing the same thing. So we see it on everything from roads to public safety to public education and so on. And so I may not like what Republicans are doing nationally right now, but you can't say that they haven't shown just how fragile a lot of our systems and institutions are. And so what I'd like to see is there to be an advocacy effort by members of Congress in similar cities, pushing to alter the formula in some way, shape, or form so that communities like ours don't get left behind. That's not headline news, right? That is a system issue, system design, system gap. but to make a change like that would have a transformative impact for a community like Indy on a whole range of things, not just from our roads, but on housing, on homelessness, and every issue under the sun, basically.
Well, I know, Mr. President, that you as a candidate for Senate District 29, one of the things that I know you're a proponent of is building coalitions, making sure that folks are coming together. And I would even include that would mean, okay, working with other folks that are part of our party to solve some of these issues. So what are some of those things? Because I want to give you an opportunity, kind of put your potential Senate hat on and talk to a congressman and kind of say, hey, here's some questions I have, or maybe here's some things that we can do together, and just kind of let the public kind of peep into kind of what that would look like.
Revs, I believe that you can't do and be successful in isolation. So it's about collaboration. So you have to be able to say, oh, the Congress person is extremely important. So you want to be able to work with them, understand what they're doing. You got to understand the timing of everything to even be able to make sure you are informing the people or getting ready to be able to receive the funds, know what you would do to work in concert. So I think one of the things that we can improve on is the communication between federal, state, and local. Typically in Indiana, we're in silos. Everybody operates in their own individual silo. And in some cases, I think they've been instructed, stay in your silo. Well, if we're going to help our people, our Hoosiers, that silo, those walls need to come down so that we're exchanging information, so that we are truly working together. And I think everybody wins. I think that the Congress person wins. I think that the state Senate, the state rep wins. I think local councilors win. Trustees will win. Everybody will win when we have fewer of those walls. And instead of saying segment, it's saying, okay, now how do we work together? Because we know housing is an issue. We know, look at our streets. If anybody's driving on them, they know that we got problems with our streets. We will be better off and people will be happier if we would work together. And it's even more critical if you have, super majorities that you're fighting against in the state house, et cetera. Then we need to do this collectively, not individually. I don't believe I'm not pretending to say I can do this by myself, because I know I can't. What we have to do is coalition build and say, let's work together for the good of Indiana, and everybody play, quote unquote, their respective roles. So at least we're talking and communicating and not just being like, well, I did my part, now all the rest of you figure this out. That's not a winning strategy, in my opinion.
If you'd like to be part of the conversation, you can call into the radio station. The number is 317-480-1310. Once again, we have a candidate for congressional district number 7. We have George Hornedo. He's joining us on tonight to share with you. So feel free, if you have any questions or comments, to call in. Once again, 317-480-1310. Now, George, Pastor Greene just mentioned, really that communication piece, not being in silos. Are you seeing that just in your campaign experience? Are you seeing that same thing? And how do we, I guess, how do we defeat that?
I'm seeing it both from a policy standpoint and community standpoint. I'm seeing it from a political standpoint. Look, the traditional model in politics is top down, right? It's you spend all your time talking to donors or maybe just grass tops folks and, raise as much money as you can, don't invest it in community. And then in the final 1 to 2 months, you do TV ads. I think the biggest problem in our politics right now, before you even get to policy or message or messenger, is an erosion of trust. And I don't think you rebuild that trust in our leaders and our parties and our system at large with TV ads. I think you got to do it bottom up, be in community, actually talk to people. This isn't groundbreaking, right? We have built the largest Democratic field operation that the state has seen in years. We've knocked over 38,000 doors so far, on track to get close to 60,000. We have made over 1 million calls. We've had direct one-on-one conversations with over 16,000 folks here in district. And, what we're hearing are not just a heat map of the different issues that people are facing in their daily lives, but most people don't know, and certainly nobody cares, whether a solution comes from federal, state, or local government. And then the other piece, to Pastor Greene's point, is that most of these problems are extremely complex, and it requires whole of government solutions. And so in the absence of a governor, and unfortunately a mayor as well, that have that sort of forward-looking vision, if I get into this seat, I want to use it as a platform to put forward a vision on any given issue, be that advocate in chief. Because vision building is difficult, yes, and rallying people around a vision is even harder. Executing upon a vision is the hardest. But if you don't have a vision, then you're just walking aimlessly. So if we're talking affordable housing, as a member of Congress has an oversight role, but there's also policy and the legislative role. So I'll lead the way on that. And I may not be able to say, hey, city council and mayor, let's rethink some of these well-intentioned but burdensome regulations around zoning and permitting and licensing that may slow down the build of affordable housing units. I may not be able to tell the governor and the state legislature saying, hey, let's establish some tenant protection, the pieces of legislation, because, we're in the bottom of the barrel in the country in that, and the city is fifth worst in the country in eviction rates. But it doesn't mean that I can't use my platform to force the conversation, right? We need to be talking about these issues. We need to realize that this seat is more, or should be more, than an up or down vote on any given issue in DC. It is a platform to be a representative and a leader for the community at large. So if something's happening like data centers, that's a local or state level issue, I, as a member of Congress, am still going to be speaking out on it. And that's why I was there with Martindale Brightwood community during the hearing the other day. And so I fundamentally just think that we need to reimagine what this role looks like. And so completely agree with Pastor Greene that we got to build coalitions and do the hard work of rallying people and rowing the boat in the same direction.
We have candidate for the 7th Congressional District on with us on tonight, George Hornedo. He's here to take your questions and comments. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, you can call into the radio station. That number is 317-480-1310. Once again, 317-480-1310. We do have a caller on the line. Let's bring in Marilyn. Marilyn, are you there? I think we may have lost Marilyn. Okay. Well, Marilyn, feel free to call back. Once again, 317-480-1310, 317-480-1310. Now, you've actually mentioned, George, quite a few issues right here that we're dealing with in Indiana. And Pastor Greene, he mentioned the data centers, which you've been speaking out against. We know we've got ICE, that's here in central Indiana. He talked about the affordable housing crisis that we're suffering. Those are issues that a lot of folks are dealing with right now. And it's something I'm not sure that we can say that we've got leadership that's leading us in those areas.
Yeah. No, I mean, that's why I'm running, right? I kind of just got tired of looking around for that leadership. I think we continue to see this pattern of the state blaming the city blaming the state, and federal representation sitting on the sidelines saying, not my purview. But when people are struggling, everything should be your purview, right? If people are uncomfortable, I, as a member of Congress, should never feel comfortable in that seat, because it means that there is more work to do to make the uncomfortable comfortable. Well, that's something that I think a lot about, and that's why we just need to reimagine this. We're not New York, we're not California, we're not Illinois. We don't have all these Democratic members in our congressional delegation, and this is the only safe Democratic seat. So I think this is a critical time for the city of Indianapolis, with this seat, and I also think with the 2027 mayoral race, to get new leadership in that is a break from the past, that actually has a bold, forward-looking vision for what this community can be, but also understands that that's the baseline of the job, right? We got to do that coalition building. We got to do the beyond just the coalition building with respect to policy. We have to do the party building work, because that's the other thing that animates me for this race. I think 21 years of one party rule by any party, quite frankly, doesn't necessarily lend itself to the best outcomes, because then you don't have to work with people, and 21 years of one party Republican rule has led to really detrimental impacts, for the state and certainly for Indianapolis. And I think, go ahead.
No, go ahead and finish your thought.
I was going to say, I think about the fact that when Julia Carson was in this seat, this was the best district in the state in voter turnout. And that's when we had more balanced government and Democrats were competing, even winning statewide. Unfortunately, now we're the worst district in the state in voter turnout, in a state that already ranks dead last in the country in voter turnout. So for Indy to be one of the least politically engaged places in the country is both embarrassing, but it doesn't have to be that way. And so that's why I think that we need to be organizing year round. So, successful in this race, it doesn't stop. Being able to get to Congress isn't the destination. That's the beginning. And that's just one place to do the work, because it's also doing the work here at home in the community. I'm trying to build an ecosystem here where Democrats can succeed across the board, because we have to start thinking about we and less about me.
All right. Well, a couple of things that he just mentioned there. Number one, it's going to be work. It's going to take work. And then also we can actually look at, when we're looking at the current climate, we don't necessarily have to just subscribe to the fact that, okay, we're in the super majority and we're the minority, because we can change that. We certainly can. But let's go ahead. We'll go to our first commercial break. We did get, we lost Marilyn, but I think Marilyn's back. So we'll try to have Marilyn join us when we come back from our commercial break. Once again, if you'd like to be part of the conversation, you have a question for our candidate, feel free to call in. That number is 317-480-1310. 317-480-1310. You're listening to the Concerned Clergy Radio Show on Praise AM 1310, 95.1 FM, Indy's Inspiration Station. So you can early vote right now at the City County Building, downtown Indianapolis. You can early vote as of yesterday. So get your vote in. Don't just be registered to vote, but make sure that you exercise your right to vote. We're talking on tonight with Congressional District number 7 candidate, George Hornedo. He's joining us on tonight talking about what his platform's going to be, and we invite you to be part of the conversation. If you have a question or comment, feel free to call into the radio station. The number's 317-480-1310, or you can also comment on our Facebook feed. Also, we have Marilyn that's been holding. Let's go ahead and bring Marilyn in. Marilyn,
hi everybody. Good evening.
Good evening.
Good. Okay, I have, I guess, a comment and a couple questions. Based on what you spoke about, getting the party to collaborate and come together and work together, I have a concern. Well, let me ask you this question first. Do you know how many opponents you have for this seat?
Yes, ma'am.
How many people are running for the same seat you're running for?
Yes, ma'am. Including the congressman, there are 4 candidates in the race.
Okay. So with 4 candidates in the race, do you feel like that could possibly split the vote and we still not win the seat?
Just to be clear, this is 4 candidates in the Democratic primary. Early voting starting now, started yesterday, and it's on May 5th. This is a safe Democratic seat, so I mean, you never want to take anything for granted, but whoever comes out of this primary, it's almost a foregone conclusion that they will most certainly win in November.
Okay.
If I thought that I would put the seat for Republicans, I would have.
Okay.
Go ahead, Marilyn.
So my other question is, say you don't win and one of your opponents win, will you be willing to collaborate and work with them concerning the issues of our state?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, obviously we want, whatever Democratic nominee comes out of the primary to be successful in November. And, look, elected office is but one way to have an impact. I had an impact before I was a candidate. I'll have an impact, if I win, I'll have an impact, even if I'm not successful in this endeavor. And, always going to do the work to try and better the community and from whatever perch that I can.
Okay, then I have one more question.
Okay, Marilyn.
They are okay. I'm not under. There's a lot of. I live on the east side of town, and they're doing a lot of building around us, which is causing people to home property taxes and assessments on their homes to go up excessively, because I'm fighting it. I have an appeal filed on mine right now because I feel like, will there be anything that we can come up with to put a hold on that? Because it's not fair that if a new community or one house in the community builds and or remodels, doesn't mean everybody in the community now have to have their prices jacked up. That ain't even right.
I mean, trust me.
That's not right. We need to just make some amendments to that.
Yeah, trust me, I feel your pain. I'm considering doing an appeal on the property tax that I got coming in. I had to do a double take and say, is that right? Like, that can't be right. And it's an issue that I hear a lot about the doors, and people are hurting. And I think it's not just property taxes, but it's everything at large. So it feels like a nail in the coffin, right? When groceries are as high as they are, utility costs are rising, childcare for those that, have the need for childcare, right? Healthcare costs. So it just feels almost like we're hamsters on a wheel, and we keep running and we can't get there. We can't catch up, and everything's increasing, but our wages, right? And so it's a broader and larger issue on the property tax piece itself. Unfortunately, that's more on the state local side. So I'm sure Pastor Greene's got some ideas there, but I would want to be, to the point of coalition building, be able to use my platform to talk about how people are hurting, and we got to figure something out. We need reforms. We need something better.
Thank you so much for your phone call, Marilyn.
Okay.
Thank you, Marilyn.
All right, and continue to listen and call in, and we'll toss it to you right there, Mr. President, because I know you've been hearing that pretty much every place you go, that affordability piece, the property taxes, everything that George just kind of mentioned, and he said that's something that could be more of a state and local issue, and you've been hearing it as a state candidate.
Oh, without a doubt, affordability first is my platform. But everybody I talk to, life is too expensive. I mean, but a lot of these decisions happen at the federal level, right? We're currently in a war. What happened as a result of that? Gas prices went up. Grocery prices were already up. Now gas prices are up. Utility rates are unstable. Property taxes are up. Even in well-to-do neighborhoods, because of the impact of state laws. People are looking at referendums. We got 44 schools currently in the state of Indiana that are looking to vote on a referendum in November just to support public education. That will we call it a referendum. The simple term for it, that's another tax, right? People are looking like, okay, how do I swallow all of this? And it's becoming very difficult, and even more difficult if you look for people who are on fixed income, seniors having to pick and choose between, hey, do I take care of my health care or is it my groceries here? And how do I balance that? And I'm literally talking to people, Rem Alexander, are cutting their peels in half. And while they're, taking half the peel when they should be taking the whole peel, I'm not sure that's what should be happening because that doctor prescribed a full pill. I'm not a doctor, but I'm like, I don't know about that. But they're being forced to make those types of decisions. And you hate that for people who have spent a lifetime doing all the right things and now wake up and find themselves in this boat. And a lot of it's driven by decisions, quote unquote, outside of their control. Because whether we like it or not, these things overlap. What happens at the federal government is going to walk down your street. This current thing is an example, right? Because of what's happening, with a decision made about this war, drive to the gas station, and you'll see the impact of that.
Yeah. And I think just to jump in there real quick, I think Pastor Greene about how we spoke recently about the idea of a budget being a moral document, and it shows your priorities. And to hear, okay, our mad king, of a president wants to spend $200 billion for a conflict in Iran that nobody wants, when that could, house, our neighbors here, that could, feed the hungry, that could educate our children, and our priorities are deeply off. We've got a governor that touts a $1.2 billion, plus dollar budget surplus that he made on the backs of seniors and working families and children, and it's not right. And I think about some of these people I've been able to connect with on the trail, right? Because every single day, it's different stories of struggle and of challenge. I think about the 25-year IPS educator that can't stretch her dollar far enough, so she's now going to a food bank. An IPS educator, somebody that is investing in the community, investing in our children, but the community can't invest back in her. I think about the mother with 2 young boys on the spectrum that said that they are detrimentally affected by cuts to special education. I think about the woman with multiple sclerosis that, said she was turned away, said that she can't get food stamps because she makes $100 more than the threshold. And the story that really kind of sticks with me and I keep coming back to, it was very, I think, formative for me in this campaign. We were out knocking doors and I get a call from my organizer to come to the back door of this one home because it was, this woman in her 40s and her mother that wanted to speak to me directly. And so I went, and she had some mobility issues. So they asked me to come inside, and I see the woman, in a chair, not a wheelchair or anything, but I could tell she was probably confined to that chair by and large. And so she said she had never had a candidate or an elected official, come by before, and she appreciated it and wanted to take the opportunity to talk about her challenges. So this is a woman that used to live in Indy, worked at a hotel, most recently had lived in Pennsylvania, where she was on Medicaid. Upon coming back to Indiana, she has been denied, an appeal after appeal, interview after interview, has been denied Medicaid. And she has deep vein thrombosis in both legs, diabetic, neuropathy, severe, arthritis. She is in such pain that she cannot even sleep in a bed. So she is always in that chair. And it was the most wonderful woman. We had a great conversation, etc. But I left deeply sad, but also committed to the work, right? Sad because I don't really care what bureaucratic piece was probably missing that meant that she didn't qualify. This is a woman that is dying, that is in decline, and the system is not holding her. She fell through the cracks. And that tells me the system is not working for the people it should be working for, whether it's unintentional or whether that's the way it was built, for that purpose. But we've got to fix these failing systems because people are hurting. It should not be this difficult to get by.
Absolutely. We have to go to our next commercial break. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, you can call into the radio station. And that phone number, 317-480-1310. Once again, 317-480-1310. Or you can also comment on our Facebook page. But let's go ahead and go to our break. And when we come back, we'll continue our conversation with candidate for Congressional District number 7, George Hornedo. You're listening to the Concerned Clergy Radio Show on Praise AM 1310, 95.1 FM Indy's Inspiration Station.
The United States can't take care of daycare. It has to be up to a state. We have 50 states. We have all these other people. We're fighting wars. We can't take care of daycare. You got to let a state take care of daycare, and they should pay for it, too. They should pay. They have to raise their taxes, but they should pay for it. And we could lower our taxes a little bit to them to make up, but it's not possible for us to take care of daycare. Medicaid, Medicare, all these individual things, they can do it on a state basis. You can't do it on a federal. We have to take care of one thing, military protection. We have to guard the country. But all these little things, all these little scams that have taken place, you have to let states take care of them, Russell, and you have to do it. Linda McMahon, she's done such a great job. She's moved education back to the states. And you know what? You need congressional approval. I said, don't worry about it, just do it. She did it. They're largely back in the states. We have all these buildings empty, education building. Where is Linda? She's not here, right? But I'll tell you let her know I said it.
All right, so there we go. That's where we're at right now. Currently, from a federal level, we're being told that federal government's not going to provide funding. That's the direction that we're going to, and they're saying it's going to be up to the states. And that's why we're talking to congressional candidate on tonight, George Hornedo, so he can kind of speak to us. How does that work, George? How would that work? Where now it would be incumbent on the states to all of a sudden just find funding. But what he did say is that we need to be focused from a federal perspective on military. And I know the figure was thrown out, $200 billion, but actually that's been raised to about $2 trillion now.
I think competitive general election races, Democratic candidates should basically just use that as an ad right there. You see that he's talking about these programs that so many people rely on and are important to families, to people all across the country. And what did he call them? He called them scams. And then what else did he say? He said that when he told the Secretary of Education, oh, let's disband this, like leave it to the states. And she said, you need congressional approval. He goes, who cares? Do it anyways.
Do it anyway.
That says everything you need to know. Everything you need to know. And the thing is, it doesn't even make sense what he's talking about, because when most people talk about leave it to the states, what they mean is it's still federal money, but it's in block grant form, which just means that states determine how they're going to disperse money. But now he's talking about removing money from the equation altogether. That's something we've not seen before. So that the reality is that wouldn't be possible. It means we wouldn't have these programs. It wouldn't be sufficient. So he is saying he does not care about any of this because he is focused on what is become an imperial presidency. We have to take this man seriously, and sometimes literally. He's saying all these crazy things all the time, but he also acts on it. There is an outside group that is working with the White House, looking at a potential executive orders for how he can overtake elections. And it may not even be the way that people think of, oh, will we have elections? Sure, I think we'll have elections, but the question is it going to be fair or free? If you have National Guard or if you have, ICE.
Did we lose him?
Yeah, I think we lost George. Let's see if he comes back here. Well, Mr. President, I'll go ahead and
they're fearful or feel fear to have it intimidated for some of these races, right? And so, it is. Look, I can't blame anybody for being disillusioned in this moment. I feel like every day it's bad news after bad news. But the choice is either step away or step up. And for me, I'm always going to choose step up. And right now, stepping up means running for Congress. And that's a bit unique. It doesn't have to mean that for everybody. But stepping up means using your voice, voting. Everybody's got agency. Everybody has a network. Friends, family, folks in your place of worship, in your book club, in your bowling league, whatever it might be, right? Use your platform, educate people, get people active, get people to stand up for themselves. Because if we just take our disillusionment and bury our head in the sand, that's how they continue to win. Because there is no bottom to this. I need people to understand that we are not some shining city on a hill and that this can't happen here. It's happening now. We are in the middle of this, and we have to fight back.
If you'd like to be part of the conversation, you can call into the radio station. The number is 317-480-1310. Once again, 317-480-1310. We still have a few minutes with our candidate for congressional district number 7. Now, Pastor Greene, George just kind of highlighted, the importance of getting people involved. I know you've been kind of, banging on doors as well. What are you hearing as far as, the, I'll say, the excitement? Are people getting at least energized to go out and vote now? Or are we still seeing that, the numbers that Indiana's had in the past, that's kind of what we can look forward again in this primary?
I think you're going to see more people participate. I'm not saying I'd say they're driven by their frustration. I think that their concern and their frustration, hopefully, is going to mean you're going to see more people turn out to vote, and there is urgency because when you see what is going on, by November we do need to see a Democrat way where that Congress shifts and they are becoming vocal, lifting their voices against the president and what he's doing, because he's doing these actions without congressional oversight. He's just rolling as a dictator, and our democracy is at stake. And so who we see in the Congress does matter, because they need to be lifting their voices when they get there, because it's going to be critical at that time for the situation that what we face right now. And then all the he is doing it rolling down, and when he's taking funds, whether that's federal coming to the state, well, what Governor Braun is doing is saying, "Hey, we ain't gonna handle that. You local people handle that." And so that he's passing the thing, saying, "Okay, this is what we got. I'm passing on to the local people. So local people, you go figure out healthcare. You go figure out childcare. You go figure out these issues." Well, the local government doesn't have monies to do that. The only way they could do that is there would have to be a heck of a tax increase to say, "Okay, people, y'all pay for this." And there are counties that clearly can't even begin to do that. It's not even an option. But that's what they're forcing people to, in simplistic terms. The president, all he wants is for military. Send it to the state figure it out. And in the case of Indiana, Governor Braun is saying, "Hey, local people will figure it out." Well, as George wants to go to the federal levels of the Congress and lift his voice, well, guess what? At the state level, we got to go to Governor Braun and lift our voices. There's any time to be silent. As George mentioned earlier, I put things in a moral frame, and because I see it as a moral issue, we cannot be silent. We must lift our voices in this season.
And George, I think you're back with us now. Now, I mean, even to that point, we haven't even talked about roads, which is a huge issue right now. While we're talking about all the other items, healthcare, daycare. I mean, for those that don't even vote, they're dealing with the conditions of the potholes in the roads in Indiana.
I mean, we've got the worst roads in the state, and the state is ranked worst in the country in infrastructure. And so, again, it doesn't have to be this way. And if government can't prove that it can work for people on something as seemingly basic as our roads, then how are people supposed to trust it on everything else, right? And so, there is that state and local component, and people, say that to me, and I said, yes, but anything that is state and local can also be a federal issue. So I think about it in a couple of different ways. For one, if I am more proactive in bringing competitive grant money home on any given issue, does that free up the city budget to put more money towards infrastructure? Obviously, I can't make the mayor and the council do that, but I can allow for the circumstances where it's possible. Then the other piece that I think about goes back to that, adjusting the federal formula, funding formula that I talked about earlier, so that communities like ours don't get left behind. Because right now, federal road funding flows directly to the state to then determine how they administer it. But as a Democratic city and a Republican-led state, we are often get the short end of the stick as it comes to that. And so we have to think creatively and outside of the box on how to get around that, unless we're able to build a better working relationship with the state and make sure that we get our fair share. But to date, that's not been.
Well, typically when we hear Trump say stuff out loud, then you'll see an immediate, domino effect, if you will, by all of the lawmakers on the Republican side or the MAGA lawmakers trying to institute what it is he just said out loud. Are we seeing that here in Indiana, where we actually have Republicans trying to find a way, or are they even willing to fight against, what he said, as far as it's going to have to come down to the states and dealing with daycare, Medicare, Medicaid, and Social Security?
I mean, I think with the governor is ranked either the worst or second least popular governor in the country. So I don't think that what he says necessarily goes with the state legislature. And we saw that in the redistricting fight, right? That battle, I think, was really important. And there's a lot of coalition building that folks like Pastor Greene were leading, a lot of great work from organizations across the state. For our campaign, we built the largest field operation on the Democratic side to both educate voters what was at stake with redistricting, as well as help drive them to action. So we knocked at that point over 24,000 doors, over 47,000 phone calls to do that, because this congressional seat was not going to exist in the way that it's currently drawn up. And so at that point, I pivoted the campaign to be a vehicle for grassroots defense. Thought about, how do we turn every ounce of volunteer energy, every phone banking shift, every hour knocking doors into doing that work to get people, engaged in this effort. And as much as that was work that us on the Democratic side of the aisle were doing, it was also a lot on the Republican side. Right. Because once you get past Democrat versus Republican, then you get urban versus rural. And I think a lot of these Republican legislators out of rural areas in the state didn't want 4 Indianapolis Republicans to govern over them. Right. And so sometimes I think that is a good example at how politics can create strange bedfellows. And sometimes you have to break bread with people, on one issue that on any other given issue may be on the opposite side of them. But I think that we need to approach things with that level of good faith and being able to find the areas of commonality and common ground that we can actually work together. And that's what's best for people at the end of the day. And I think that's what we have to center everything. Because the reality is, am I a Democrat? Sure. My whole career, like I mentioned earlier, has been in Democratic politics. I'm proud to be a Democrat. But at the end of the day, I'm a person first. And I'm always going to be about people, results, and accountability. And so if we put people before party, we're going to have a lot more success, not just as a party, but as a state as well.
Well, I know that's certainly something you've been, as you've been on your campaign trail, Mr. President, you've kind of been leading with just that what we're dealing with. It's, all about morality and thinking about people first.
It has to be, in my opinion. I think that what's gotten us where we are is not having people first. And so if we're going to fix the problem, we don't want just a blue wave. We need a blue wave that's going to put people first, because we have to see, how did we get here? And if we don't, and you can't ask the same people who got you here to fix the problem generally. In my opinion, you're going to have a fresh set of eyes, a fresh set of voices at the table to shift this, because there's a reason why we are where we are. Elections do have consequences. And so we have to own that. And that's called accountability. That's not necessarily pointing fingers. That's just the reality of where we are. Now, once you do that accountability check, then you say, okay, if we're getting back to people first, what does that look like? And so those are legitimate things. That's not finger pointing, not blaming somebody, but you got to be honest enough, like, how did we get here? And we can't go back and do the same things and end up in the same boat. That's called insanity. So what we have to do is say, how do we do something different that is going to be people-centered? Because we have a number of issues here we need to address. And we have to be honest with that. You don't lie and pretend like your roads are great when they're not. You got to own that. Hey, our streets need some help, and so we've got to own that, and we got to say, hey, we got to fix that. What's that going to take? We got to put people first. We're going to have to do some things a little differently, and we have to own that. We didn't get there just because the Republicans. We've contributed to that.
Well, George, we have a couple minutes left, and with that, I certainly want to give you an opportunity to share with folks how they can either be engaged with your campaign or how they can hear or find out more about your campaign. So, if you can you, with our final minutes, go ahead and share that information?
Yeah, no, I'd love for everybody to check out my website, georgehornedo.com, and Hornedo spelled Hornedo. You can learn a little bit more about me, watch some of the campaign videos that we've been able to put out, which I think are a distillation of the sort of campaign we're running. I've got a whole lot around my policy agenda and vision that's there, and kind of detailed plans of how we're going to get a lot of this work that we're talking about done. But also, like I said, this is a bottom-up campaign. This is less about me than it is about community, and so that's why I'm wanting to hear and talk to as many different people as possible and learn about not just what you want out of your representation, but what are the issues that are top of mind for you. What are you waking up, going to bed concerned about, right? And so, I always give out my personal cell number and email, and I'll do the same here. So my cell is 317-354-7073. And my email is just george@georgehornedo.com. And I invite anybody to reach out and would love to chat.
All right. Can you give that number one more time?
Yes, it is 317-354-7073.
And the website?
georgehornedo.com.
All right. Well, we thank you so much for joining us on tonight. I know a lot of what I'm hearing is folks just want somebody that's fighting for them. They feel like, we're just a punching bag and just getting hit and not able to hit back. So having someone that's fighting for the people is, I will say, step number one.
Yeah.
Right
Absolutely.
there. So we thank you for joining us on tonight. Best wishes for you and your campaign. And once again, we want folks to know you can early vote now. So you can go down to the city county building. If you don't want to early vote there, get your plan together as far as your early mail-in ballot. You can do that also. But now's the time to get engaged, get involved, vote for this primary. We only have less than a month now. In order to make sure that we're getting our candidates in our vote in. So once again, that first Tuesday in May is going to be primary day. Get your voting plan and get it in. Thanks, Mr. Hornedo. Thank you, Mr. President. And everyone, we thank you as well. We'll see you on next week. Be blessed.
Thank you. I'll take it.